Thank you. Okay, good. So I know that's something to get used to because in some of your other online classes, that are smaller, where you actually actively participate, it's nice to have your camera on. But for this class, it's just too big. And so we don't really want to have everybody's cameras on. And also, it's important to keep your audio muted. I always provide the opportunity for you during lecture. If you have questions, please save them to the end. But what you can do is you can use the chat, right? So send me your questions during lecture, during chat. And then at the end, once the lecture's over, I try to stop with a few minutes to spare. And then that's when I can look at the chat messages and I can answer your questions that way for everybody to hear. Okay, so feel free to send me chat messages with questions during the lecture and stick around afterwards if you would like to hear me address your question. So again, everybody, welcome to Bio 275. This is Cell and Molecular Biology. So I'm Howard Shen. I'm your instructor for the class. On the screen here, you can see my contact info. There's my email. I'm located in the Life Sciences building. That's the LSB building in room 311. And office hours. I always welcome students to come and talk with me about any of the material in the class that you're having trouble with, or just to ask for my advice about things. These days, because everything is online, I'm happy to do it over Zoom, or if you would like, you can make an appointment and come speak to me in person, one-on-one. So that's totally fine with me. But either way, it's going to be by appointment. I normally have standing office hours if this were a regular semester. But that's just because for a regular semester, students could just show up. And if I'm working in my office, then you're welcome to come in and sit down and talk. I realized if I have Zoom office hours, if I have a standing office hours, it's very rarely that students actually just show up. And then I'm just sitting here for an hour, on Zoom, like by myself. So it's way better. If you would like to meet with me, just shoot me a message, shoot me an email, and we'll set up a time either over Zoom or when you can come in and visit me in my office. Okay, but you're certainly welcome to do that. All right. So a couple of things, tools for our online semester. Lectures will be given live, just like we're doing right now, over Zoom, Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 9:30 to 10:20 a.m. So this is, of course, our live synchronous lecture, but the lectures are recorded, just like I'm recording right now, and they will be uploaded to YouTube. So that way, if you cannot make it to live lecture, or you just want to know that there's the opportunity to watch the videos again, you can go to YouTube. So the YouTube channel is shown here. It's Bio 275, Cell and Molecular Biology with Dr. Shen. Okay, so I encourage you to be aware of that and to check that out. So an important point about recorded lectures and watching them on YouTube. I don't know how most of you have been feeling about the whole online, way that classes are delivered. My feeling is I want to try to make this class feel as normal and in-person as possible. I've certainly had, my share of challenges adapting to online teaching, and I'm sure all of you have had in some way, form, or another challenges with adjusting to online learning. My thought is if I can make this as close to an in-person experience as possible, I think that's what we're all used to and what we kind of expect, from going to class and attending class in college. Okay. So to do that, I do deliver these live lectures, but at the same time, hey, it's so easy for me to just push the button and record the lecture, so I might as well, right? And then I put it up on YouTube so that that's also available. But a word of warning, because of that, right? That means, many of you right now are like, oh, you mean I don't even have to show up live at this time? I can just watch the video later? Yeah, right? That's an option, but I want to warn you against getting too caught up in that. It's really important to keep up with the lectures. We move very fast in this class, right? We go through many different topics, oftentimes 3 or more, kind of major sections of different subjects per week. If you can keep up with the lectures, that means if you can attend the live lecture, I think that's a good kind of routine. It's kind of like self-discipline, right? I mean, obviously during a normal semester, when there is just a live lecture and there is no recording, I mean, you're all used to that, right? And you know how it is, your motivation to actually go to lecture versus missing out on it. But given that the videos are available on YouTube, right, it's really more important that you motivate yourself and figure out, how to make this work for you. If you can keep up with the lectures, either through attending live or just making sure that you watch the lecture video by the end of the day so that you still technically have gone or seen the lecture on Monday and Wednesday and Friday, then I think you will be much more comfortable in this class, right? Because if you keep up, then you'll have good feelings like, oh, I understand what we're talking about. I get this. Or I know what I want to ask my teaching intern during recitation this week. Right? I see how the topics that we're talking about today fit in with the last lecture. And most importantly, I think you'll feel like you're really having a better chance at understanding things if you keep up. Right? The opposite of that would be falling behind. If you get into this trap of saying, hey, I know all the lectures are on YouTube, so yeah, I don't really feel like watching it tonight. I'll do it tomorrow. And then you know what I'm going to say. Tomorrow becomes the next day when there's another lecture that's now piling up. And pretty soon you're really far behind, right? And don't be this person here, right? She's way behind and she's like, oh, I only have 8 more lectures to binge watch before tomorrow's exam. Guess what? Right? That's setting yourself up for failure. Right? So the convenience of recorded lectures can be a blessing or a curse. And really, that's up to you to decide. Right? So really, it just means you have to be honest with yourself. It's a brand new semester. None of you are behind right now. Right? That's a nice feeling. It's up to you to keep yourself from falling behind. All right. So I encourage you, if you're not going to come to the live broadcast, make sure you watch the lecture by the end of the day so that technically you are keeping up and you got today's content. In addition to the 3 lectures per week on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, all of you signed up for this class by choosing a recitation section. So the recitation sections meet once per week for 50 minutes. And all the recitation sections are on either Thursday or Friday. So unlike lecture, where I don't keep track about attendance and whether or not you're here or not for lecture right now, recitation attendance is mandatory, right? You have to show up for your live Zoom recitation with your TI. Each section has its own Zoom meeting ID that is unique to that particular recitation section. If you go to La Lima, you will see that your TI has introduced herself or introduced himself already with a welcome message, and she or he has already posted on there the unique Zoom meeting ID and passcode that you'll need to use starting this Thursday or Friday to attend your first recitation section. So be aware of that and look for that. And remember that that Zoom ID and passcode is different from the lecture ones that you're using right now, because all 100 or whatever students in the class use this one to come to lecture. And then each of the 12 recitation sections has a different Zoom ID and passcode to get to. What's going to happen during recitation? Right, during recitation, your highly qualified TI, who is actually just a fellow undergraduate classmate of yours, who took Bio 275 with me last semester, right, and importantly, got an A in the class. So all of the TIs did outstanding in the class last semester, and they expressed interest in wanting to participate as a TI, and that's why I recruited them. During recitation, your TI will review the lecture material for that week, usually with a little mini kind of review lecture. they will give that week's quiz or the exam for that. When we get to those parts of the semester, when we have exams, your TI will also go over the homework with you and, importantly, answer your questions. Right? So it's really important that you connect with your TI. All 12 of the TIs, they're wonderful personalities. They're very easygoing people who are nice to talk to, and they're very enthusiastic about helping you, right? So it's up to you to kind of connect with them, right? Your TIs are the first kind of level of you connecting with this class, right? So any questions you have along the way about course material, or different things like the quizzes, exams, or just how you are doing in the class, go to your TI first, right? Because they will be trained to answer your questions on that. But of course, if you have additional concerns or questions that you feel like your TI cannot address with you successfully, you can always reach out to me directly via email. Okay, and then we can set up an appointment over Zoom or in person for you and I to talk about that. All right. So it's really important that you're able to attend your recitation sections and get to know your TI. Okay. Oh, and importantly, you may only attend the recitation section that you are enrolled in. All right. Because your assignments, like quizzes, homeworks, your ability to take the exam is all directly tied to your TI's section and how she or he is keeping track of your stuff in that Laulima section. All right, so you cannot go to another section, even if it's just, you want to like double up and go to 2 recitation sections a week. No, do not do that, because that's also not fair for the students who are properly in that section, right? If you're just kind of crashing it, showing up because you want to ask some additional questions, right? That's not fair for your classmates who are actually part of that section and who deserve the undivided attention from their TI. Okay. So some other tools to keep in mind on Laulima, you will find the syllabus link, which is off to, I think, normally on the left side of the Laulima site. There you will find information about the class. So on there is the syllabus for the class that goes over all kinds of information, stuff that we've already talked about, but also the grading policy, the grading breakdown, things like makeup policies. If you miss a quiz, for example, that's all covered there. Okay. In the resources link, and there's also under the syllabus link a semester schedule that outlines when the exams are, and more importantly, week to week, all of the topics and the chapters in the book that the lecturers kind of refer to. Right. In the resources link, you will find the lecture slides. So every weekend, I provide the TIs with the new set of lecture slides for the upcoming week so that they can upload them to Laulima. So for those of you who like to have the lectures beforehand, I don't know, some of you like to print them out so that you can actually make notes on them during lecture, you have that option. Every lecture, starting with the second lecture, so starting with this Wednesday lecture, I provide a study guide. Again, the study guide really is useful for highlighting sort of in bullet points the important topics that I want to make sure that you get from the lecture. Right. I will say that students who do well in this class, I tend to ask students when they're doing really well, like the A students, hey, how do you actually study? How do you use the study guides, right? And the students have always told me that they use the study guides very seriously as sort of like almost like an optional homework, right? By going through the study guide and making use of it, right, that really helps reinforce their understanding. Okay. In addition, pretty much every week, there is a homework assignment. Okay, and the homework assignment is available under assignments in Laulima. These are combinations of like short free response, sort of like worksheets, right, that are turned in by your recitation time meeting. Okay. There's also the Laulima tests and quizzes tool in there. So all kinds of fun stuff in there, right? Because that's where the exams and the weekly quizzes will be. And there's an email link so that you can contact your TI. All right. So today, take a look at the Laulima section, familiarize yourself with that, and get the syllabus and schedule downloaded. The textbook, a number of you have emailed me questions about the textbook. So we're using Becker's World of the Cell, 9th edition. If you want to get a hard copy of it, that's great. You know, I'm still kind of old school. I like having paper pages in front of me so I can flip around and look stuff up. You know, I tend to kind of lose my focus when I'm just staring at a screen for too long. But, you know, the ebook is fine. And of course, a much more affordable alternative to a big hard copy textbook. Either way, you do not need to subscribe to the online, you know, mastering course materials, because my feeling is if it's not going to be a mandatory thing, then I don't think it's fair for me to even like use stuff from there as part of the class, because then some students feel like they don't have access to it because they don't want to subscribe. Okay. At the same time, there's no doubt in my mind that if you want to subscribe and have access to the mastering material, you know, it'll be a very helpful tool in helping with your preparation for the class. But I'll never pull assignments or have you do questions from the mastering. Okay, so it's entirely up to you if you want to have that online access. Okay. Okay, so the other thing I want to mention before I forget is that the technology requirements for this class. Obviously, all of you are aware that you need to have Zoom access if you want to come attend the live lectures. But even if your plan turns out to be, well, I'll just watch the YouTube videos later every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you still need Zoom access because the recitation is mandatory live over Zoom. Okay. And you have to be able to not only have Zoom to attend those live recitations with your TI, but you have to have your camera working during those so that your TI can see you, because that's when your TI will give you the weekly quiz. So the quiz is done on Laulima. And so the way it works is you have to have a device like your computer, tablet, whatever, that can handle having Zoom going at the same time that you're accessing Laulima to take a quiz. Right? Because your TI, once she or he sees that everybody in their section is ready, you know, over Zoom, then they will start the quiz. And that way they can proctor you taking the quiz as the quiz is going on live over Laulima. Right? For those of you who have concerns about that, like you don't really have a computer that you think could handle both at the same time. I mean, the truth is, you know, the Zoom and Laulima, they're not super resource intensive for computers. So even an old computer, like my old one from 2012, can still handle having Laulima and Zoom going at the same time, right? If, though, you really have problems with having a computer that's like that, it may mean that you at least borrow somebody else's laptop on the recitation days once a week so that you can attend recitation, or you come to campus and make use of a computer in one of the computer centers or the libraries so you can go to recitation, or even the university has loaner computers that you can borrow for a semester. Okay, so there are many available resources for making this work. And the point that I want to make here is that there are over 100 of you in this class, right? So there's no way that I can somehow ensure that each one of you has good access. It's up to you, right, to make sure that you have good access and are able to do this. I know some of you think that's not fair, but, you know, right now, this is what we're dealing with, right? The online situation. So the minimum requirement is you have to be able to do that, all right? Okay, so let's actually talk a little bit about cell biology today and actually get this course started with some discussions about science, not just Laulima and administrative stuff. Right. This is a painting from one of my favorite artists, Shoshana Dubiner, and she makes these wonderful sort of fantastic fantasy images of science and life science. So a lot of her stuff has to do with cell biology. And so this painting I like a lot. It's kind of a depiction of a single cell, and in sort of a very fantasy land kind of way, right? It incorporates many different wonderful images within it. Hopefully all of you at least recognize this as a representation of a eukaryotic cell, because it has a nucleus in it. It has all kinds of internal membranes, like this endoplasmic reticulum around the nucleus. It has, for example, this is the Golgi complex, the Golgi apparatus, which we will learn about, and things like mitochondria, right? So that makes it a eukaryotic cell compared to a much more primitive prokaryotic cell that doesn't have membrane-bound internal organelles, right? But within it, this painting, you see different types of life represented: birds, lizards, plants, right? And it's all kind of fused together in this wonderful kind of reminder that all life on Earth is based upon the living cell. Right? The single living cell is the fundamental smallest unit of a living thing. Okay? And all life on Earth is composed of cells. Right? So as our semester goes on, and we talk about what's going on inside of this image, what's going on inside of a living cell, hopefully you'll gain a bigger appreciation for not only what are the different building blocks that make up these kind of fantastic little structures that you see in here, right? What types of biological molecules are the components that create these elaborate structures in here. You'll also get appreciation for how these different structures work together through complex networks of communication, all facilitated by biological molecules, right? You already get the impression of that when you look in this painting, like these mitochondria, right? There are these wonderful things coming out of them, going into them, right? And you get the sense that everything's kind of connected in here. But to take a step back even more, one of the things that I hope by the end of the semester that you will have a sense of, right, is that this concept of life on Earth is itself interconnected, right? Just as you have in this image, the lizard, the birds, the plants, the fish, right, all intertwined in this very artistic, fanciful thought about what life is. Hopefully, as we discuss all these molecules, you'll also at the same time get a bigger impression about how life is all interconnected through the evolution of living cells. Right? All right, so if this is an artistic impression, let's look at a more realistic impression of a living cell. All right, so here we go. This is also a living cell, and this is a real living cell. This is an amoeba. Right? So an amoeba is a single-celled organism. Right? So I said that all life on Earth, the basic living unit, is a single cell. So that means an amoeba itself is just a basic unit of life. And so all those colorful, swirly things that we saw in the previous painting in the slide, those are all present in here as well, right? Basically, this looks all drab and everything. But, you know, whatever. This is the realistic view of all those wonderful molecules and things happening inside of here, right? All these little specks are not dirt on the microscope, right? These are actual little structures that are made by the amoeba, right? And they have different functions. And these structures are all interacting in here to create a living thing, right? And it's weird if you think about it, because amoebas, you know, there's many different species of amoebas on Earth, but even the largest amoeba are only barely visible by the naked eye, right? Those would be considered pretty giant amoebas if you can just barely see them with your naked eye. Most of them are so small, you need a microscope. And yet, if you think about it, this little blob, I mean, what is it, right? It is a blob of biological molecules. In here are things like DNA, there are carbohydrates, there are lipids, and there are, I've lost track. So DNA, carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins, right? Proteins that make up many of these structures in here. And yet these are just molecules, molecules that are somehow assembled into little structures. The little specks in here are assemblies of these molecules. The membrane that you see on the outside is an assembly of these molecules, right? It is a little droplet of molecules, right, that somehow fits the definition of being alive. So that is one of the fundamental questions, a bigger philosophical question that I like you to think about as we talk about cell biology over the semester. You know, what is life, really? How do we define life? Okay. So a living cell, you can think about it this way. It's the smallest unit of an organism, right, that, that maintains certain abilities, the ability to grow, the ability to reproduce, the ability to carry out certain functions in response to changes around it, changes in the environment. For example, things like the availability of different types of molecules for the cell to make use of, whether those are good molecules like nutrients that the cell needs, or things like gases like oxygen, or potentially bad things like poisons, right? The cell has to be able to somehow respond to that as part of being a living thing. And because it's constantly responding, a living thing has to undergo continuous changes, right, throughout its lifetime up until the point when it dies. And this is kind of an interesting question, right? If you think about an amoeba, like on the previous slide, that's alive, the moment an amoeba dies, right, it's not like it somehow looks any different in that moment, right? It's still a bunch of molecules. It's just those molecules stop functioning. The structures stop functioning within it, right? And it no longer is alive. So let's think about it this way. If something like an amoeba, which is a single-celled organism, is technically a living thing, right? Living things on Earth, of course, include everything that's even more macroscopic, including us, right? We are living things, and we are comprised of cells. So an individual organism may consist of a single cell or single cell type, like the amoeba, or it may consist of many different cells and types, like the cells that make up our body. To put this in perspective, a typical adult human body is made of about 37 trillion cells. Right? I don't know about you, but I don't even know how to imagine what a trillion is, right? I mean, 1,000, okay, I can deal with that. 1,000,000, yeah, I can deal with that too, because we always think, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we had $1 million, right? But once you get to like 1 billion or 1 trillion, that's just kind of beyond, I think, our normal sense of everyday comprehension. But you and I, sitting here over Zoom, right, communicating with each other, we are made of 37 trillion cells, and there are about 250 different kinds of cells that make up the human body. Right? So that gives you, I think, a good sense of perspective here. Right? And life on Earth has the whole range of single cell organisms all the way up to organisms that are made of trillions of cells working together. So you say, well, why should I really care about cell biology, right? Because you're like, you know, I have to take Bio 275 because it's a core requirement. And in some ways, it's like this reward for passing organic chemistry. No, I joke about that, right? You're like, great, what kind of a reward is that? But why should I care about studying cell biology? Because all of you are life science students. So you're interested in understanding some aspect of life on Earth. So what I want you to realize is that cell biology is at the very core of studying life itself, studying these biological molecules like things like DNA or sugars, proteins, lipids that all come together to make the various structures that in turn, those various structures come together to make a living cell, right? That is the study of life itself, because all life is based upon the cell. If you think about the different majors that are available here at UH, right, that are considered life science or biological science majors, I think these are the four sort of big ones, the ones that most life science students have as their major. So the bio major is probably the biggest one. So marine biology is part of that. Botany is also one of the majors. I have not listed that here. Molecular cell biology, right, is the study focused on cells. And then you have things like MBBE, which is the molecular biosciences, which is more focused on things like the biological molecules specifically. And then you have microbiology, which is the study of microbes, things like bacteria, viruses, and how they function. All right. So all of you, right, who are interested in life sciences, I want you to think about this. The choice of majors is kind of like this upside down triangle, right? Biology here at UH is a very macro view of life. It includes things like the study of cell biology, that's why you're taking this class, but also things like ecology or environmental sciences, right? Marine biology, for example. Right? On the other end of this spectrum, this triangle, the gray triangle in the background comes down narrow, is microbiology. Microbiology is very focused, right, just on pathogens like bacteria and viruses and how they function and how they sort of have their little life cycle. Right? So MCB, molecular cell biology, is more sort of the middle ground. It draws from concepts of broader life sciences and concepts of microbiology, right? And it's more focused on understanding how the cells in our body function, how they maintain normal, what we call homeostasis. That means normal physiological behaviors in our tissues, and importantly, how they respond to certain threats like disease, like things like pathogens from the microbiology side. Right. So that's why in these images here, I tend to think that for students who are pre-med, for example, who don't necessarily want to have their studies limited to just microbes, right, and how a bacteria lives, right, or who don't necessarily feel like studies of ecology or environmental science necessarily would prepare you for studies about human health. MCB is kind of that middle ground here. For students who are in MBBE, oftentimes they wonder, well, isn't that also molecular biosciences? Yeah, it is, right? But I think the MBBE program is more focused on just doing things with certain types of biological molecules for applications in things like potentially agricultural sciences, right? Because that's why it's part of the CTAR college. So MCB is more focused on specifically things like eukaryotic cells and how eukaryotic cells function. All right, so that's just to give you a perspective, but the point is that a study of cell biology is inherently at the core of all of these studies. How will we approach learning about this through the semester? All right. I take us through the semester on different levels of sort of appreciating how cellular components come together. So we can start from the smallest level, which is the level of atoms. Right? You've all taken general chemistry, you've all taken organic chemistry, right? So you have at least a good foundational understanding of how atoms bind with other atoms to form things like molecules. Right? And so fundamental building blocks are molecules that are things like the nucleotides that make up nucleic acids, or amino acids, or simple sugars, right? These are small molecules that are made up of maybe just like 30 or so atoms coming together in a particular way. And then the next level is how these individual building blocks come together to form larger, more complicated macromolecules, things like a big strand of DNA, or things like a complicated protein, but that has a distinct three-dimensional shape, or lipids, or long carbohydrate chains of sugars, and how these macromolecules then come together to form structures, things like the vesicles inside of a cell, or the organelles like mitochondria, the nucleus, the endoplasmic reticulum, right? Finally, how all of these organelle structures then come together to create a single living cell. So in this range here, from the atom all the way up to a single living cell, that's the scope of what this class talks about, okay? And hopefully, you know, that's gets you kind of excited, hopefully, right? So if not, I know it's the first day, it takes a lot to get you excited. So here are our friends trying to help us get excited, right? And they love cell bio, right? Because cell bio is awesome. Okay. All right. So today was just sort of an introduction to just sort of make sure everybody could log in. And so I could go over some of that administrative stuff with you. Some things to do before our Wednesday lecture, okay, because the Wednesday is the next time we're going to meet. Number one, go to Laulima. Check out the announcements in Laulima so that you know that you can properly get announcements from your TI or from me. Be aware of when your recitation section meets over Zoom. Again, all 12 of the recitation sections, the TIs have posted the unique Zoom ID and password that students in that section will need to use on Thursday or Friday to join your first recitation section. Download the syllabus and the lecture schedule from the syllabus link in Laulima. Many of your questions about the class are probably answered just by looking at those files. Okay, but I think you owe it to yourself to spend 5 minutes and just look it over so that you know what the semester is going to be like. And I will, after this lecture is done, I will go ahead and upload it to YouTube. Okay, so you should go ahead and at some point see if you can access the video on YouTube, right? Oh, also I forgot to mention, in the resources link is where you will find the PDFs of the lectures and also the study guides. There's no study guide for today's lecture, but starting Wednesday, there will be one. And I encourage you to get the textbook, right? Either a hard copy or ebook is fine. And again, you do not need to subscribe to Mastering Online Content because I will not use any of that material for any of the assignments. Okay. All right. So let me stop the recording here.